Hey, Farmer Joe here, coming at you fresh from the field. So it's early June and I want to take this opportunity to show you around. So here we are in the tunnels. Crops are growing directly in the soil. And so this allows us to create a sheltered microclimate. It's warmer in here. It doesn't rain on the plants. It keeps them protected so that the foliage stays dry, which means that it'll be less susceptible to foliar diseases. But these already have been in the ground, I think, almost 3 weeks. These are cherry tomatoes, indeterminates. We always grow indeterminates in the middle. Indeterminates are also known as vining tomatoes because they get very long. We need that height. On the edge beds, we don't have that height. And so what we do is we grow determinates, which are also known as bush tomatoes, that grow shorter and produce fruit over a more concentrated period of time. These tomato plants look gorgeous as far as I'm concerned. These are sakura, which means cherry blossom in Japanese. They're a delicious little red, well, fairly large actually, red cherry tomato. And so this time of year, the most important thing is to not get behind on pruning. And pruning basically means that on vining tomatoes, so indeterminates, we want to keep them a little bit more tidy. We don't want them to turn into a giant jungle of tomatoes. So because, for two reasons. First of all is disease control. When we increase the airflow, we decrease bacterial and fungal disease pressure. And so by pruning them, we keep a better plant architecture, better airflow. Secondly, it's not a huge jungle, and it means that they're much easier to harvest. Irrigation, very important. Here we got 3 rows of drip tape. You can see drippity drip drip. So we're irrigating twice a day, once around 9 or 10 o'clock and once around noon or 1. On cloudy days, we obviously irrigate less or not at all. And on hot sunny days, we increase the irrigation. So yeah, tunnels are reserved for heat-loving crops such as tomatoes. We also have peppers growing in there. Let's head over to this other tunnel. We got a beautiful row of peppers, sweet peppers. This year, we're making a big change. We're going to a single row system based on the advice of our agronomist, who's an expert in this domain. He advises us, forget about the double row system. We used to do 2 rows spaced out at 12 inches between the plants on the row, and so now we went down to a single row spaced every 7 inches. The reason for that is that he says that the foliage is going to provide better cover because one of the problems in peppers is sunburn, sun scald. When the fruits are exposed to the sun, they get sunburned and they're not marketable anymore. They're perfectly edible if you just cut out the sun scalded part. I don't know. I wouldn't feel so comfortable selling a sunburned pepper to my clients, so I don't. But yeah, so this is a good way of reducing that. Also, it's going to make trellising a lot easier. We used to have to fight with like 2 sets of trellises because we basically have 2 rows per bed. But here we got a single row, so trellising will be much easier. We don't do quite as much pruning in peppers. The main thing we do is we take the flower off of that first fork. So the pepper plant usually grows straight until a certain number of leaves, and then it starts forking. It's exponential from there, fork. And so what we do is we remove the flower that grows in that first node, and that allows the plant to focus its energy on vegetative growth. So that means making leaves instead of doing tons of fruit. Peppers have the opposite problem of tomatoes. Tomatoes usually have too many leaves, which is why we prune them aggressively. Peppers usually have too many flowers. So we're trying to just balance out that vegetative versus flowering energy in the plants. And we do that by flower removal. That was probably more than you wanted to know about the tunnels, but now you know it. All right, let's keep going on our farm tour. So here we're out in the piece of land closest to the forest. Basically, the field is divided into 8 half-acre strips. So we call them by their number. This is strip 1 over here. That's strip 2 over there, and so on and so forth. So out here in strip 1, this area has been cover crop for the last 3 years. It was planted with rye and clover and grasses and alfalfa 3 years ago. And so this is our first year back into veggies. We're growing peas here. We haven't grown much peas in the past because I hate harvesting peas, but we're gonna do you pick. So if you want peas, you can come on down to the farm and harvest them yourself. So we're gonna have peas. We got a couple beds of lettuce and more beans and stuff. So these are beds that are gonna get planted in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, over here, I know it's confusing, but this is strip 5. The way it works out is that this ends up being strip 5. So this is a strip, we're doing a bit of an experiment. I'm a little worried about how the experiment is going to turn out, but basically this is a section that's going into cover crop for 3 years. So it's been vegetables for the last 5 years, and now we're going to plant a cover crop, and it'll be a cover crop for the next 3 years, and then veggies after that. So a cover crop is our plants that we grow purely to enrich the soil and to protect the soil and to build that soil microbiology. And so in that spirit, what I've done here is I've applied a massive dose of leaves. So I've put, now I'm wondering if I put way too much leaves, but I put several inches of leaves that were delivered to us in the fall by a landscaping company. And so I put the leaves, and then I wasn't able to mix them in the soil, so I put my cover crop seed, and then I went over with the disc harrow to try to mix the cover crop seed in. So you can see there's a little bit of the cover crop germinating. Definitely not enough to my liking. I'm worried that the weeds are going to get established and there won't be enough cover crop to actually suppress the weeds. So we'll keep an eye on that, and maybe in a couple weeks we'll come in and destroy that, try to get those leaves mixed in better, and try to establish a better cover crop again. Meanwhile, over in strip 6, we got our early brassicas. And as you can see, all the brassicas have to be under netting. Like that plant there is exposed, that's bad. What we want is all the plants under netting. And so by growing them under the netting, we are able to protect them from the insects. And so brassica's main problem are insects. So there we got broccoli, we got Chinese cabbage growing under there. The only problem with netting is that it also excludes beneficial insects. Chinese cabbage is very susceptible to aphids, and so right now there's some aphids under there, and so we sprayed some organic pest control products, but probably this week we'll just go ahead and take that netting off and just, it's risk management, right? So we got aphids under there, and the natural beneficial insects aren't able to get in there to control them, so we're going to take the netting off so the beneficial insects can go in and eat the aphids, but then we're also exposing our crop to other bugs that, so anyway, it's a gamble, but welcome to farming. Here we got a random bed of chard, which is not a brassica, which is why it has no netting on. The reason we grow it here is that we grow it next to the kale, and because we bunch them similarly. Kale and chard are managed similarly. These are beds that are going to be here for a while. Wow, look at that. I think we can actually harvest some kale under there. We got kohlrabi, we got some early cabbage. I guess the netting wasn't quite long enough to cover this. This is a bad situation because those uncovered plants can actually act as an infestation site where you get insects and then they spread to other areas, and anyway, that's bad. So yeah, this is our early brassica sections. All the brassicas are grouped together because that allows us good crop rotation. We try not to grow crops from the same family more than once every 4 years in the same bed. So that's strip 6A, and this is strip 6B. We split all the strips into 2A and B. So 6B is in lettuce and other various light feeders. So we got lettuce. What do we got there? We got some green onions. We got some fennel down there. We got some nice germination on beets. Beets are notoriously hard to get good germination on, but these are looking pretty good. I just irrigated them this morning, which is why the ground's a little wet. And in a couple days, we'll get in here and do some weeding. We really, this is what I consider a weeding catastrophe, right? Here we have the rows of beets, and there we've got weeds that have 2 or even 3 sets of true leaves. So this is like weed catastrophe as far as I'm concerned. I'm like freaking out, We're trying to control weeds at the cotyledon stage or the white thread stage, when the weeds haven't even come out of the soil and they're just like germinating in the soil and they haven't even come out. At that point, just a shallow hoeing can definitely kill the plants. The problem with weeds when they get true leaves is that they usually have a lot of rooting system. So even if we disrupt that, for instance, with a hoe, look at that. There is so much soil on that root cluster. Like, the likelihood of that plant actually surviving is super high because the roots are well established. It's got a lot of soil on the roots, and so the likelihood that weed's going to die when we hoe is much lower than if we get it at the correct stage, right? If we get it that cotyledon stage. All right, then over here we're in strip 8A. So this is our brassica, leafy brassica greens section. So we've got all our beds of arugula and salad mix, bok choy, kohlrabi, radishes, turnips. So yeah, there's some harvesting that's already started in this section. and we got to get in here and weed this week. Basically, we try to weed all the beds every 7 to 10 days. And once we pass like August, we can bump that down to 14 days. But really, if we're waiting 14 days at this time of year, the weeds are going to grow so fast. Speaking of weeds, over here, this is going to be our fall carrot section for Carrot Fest. And so what we've done is we've tarped this section. We got the beds ready, we subsoiled them, we disked them, and then we covered them in plastic sheets to block the weeds. And in fact, it creates a warm, damp microclimate under there for the weeds to germinate before we plant. And so that's going to allow us to hopefully plant into a nice weed-free environment, or at least as low as possible, because all those beds are going to be carrots for Carrot Fest. So stay tuned. Carrot Fest is going to be massive this year. All right, so we've looked through the fields, and now let's head into the greenhouse, see what's happening in there. Whoa, looking beautiful. Look at those gorgeous plants. So we've got tomatoes and cucumbers that were planted at the beginning of April. Here we have another batch of cucumbers that's ready to get planted this week or next week. And the reason they're a separate batch is that this whole bed was a row of tables in the spring to start our seedlings. And so now that the seedlings are pretty much all done, we've moved them all out to the seedlings tunnel. At this point, we're moving these tables out and we'll fork the bed. And next week we'll plant a row of cucumbers. Over here on the side, we got some sneaky little basil growing along the edge. That's a way to use this edge space that normally we would just be wasted. So here we've got our beef tomatoes, looking gorgeous. Beef, cherry tomatoes, cucumbers, more cherry tomatoes, and more cucumbers. You might notice the cucumbers have a fairly acute magnesium deficiency. You see that pattern of yellowing with the veins are still green? That's a sign of magnesium deficiency. And so what we do to counter that is that we apply Epsom salts. Starting this week, we spray some Epsom salts on there, and that should resolve that magnesium problem within a week or two. So the greenhouse is where we grow high value heat loving crops like tomatoes and cucumbers. And then in the fall, we rip the plants out and we plant arugula and spinach for the winter months. Over the winter, we grow those crops without any supplemental heat. And in the spring, we rip out the spinach and the arugula and we plant cucumbers and tomatoes again. And so that's the cycle of the greenhouse crops. And I hope you've enjoyed this tour. Head on over to our website, Ottawa Farm Fresh, sign up for the CSA, come by and see us in the farm store. We can't wait to meet you. Or if we already know each other, we wait to see you again. Catch you later, folks.